Born in Rochester, New York, April 17, 1918.
Grace Kennedy was a patriot, a World War II veteran of the Women's Army Corps.
Well, I had a brother that was in the Air Force, and he was having such a good time telling me all the good times all over the United States, and he's getting ready to go overseas. He said, "Boy, sis, you don't know what you're missing." So he asked me to meet him when I was saying that I joined the service then.
In December 2009, Grace was viciously murdered inside her Bryan, Ohio home, the first murder in the city in 61 years.
She was bludgeoned to death, and that is a very sad situation, and it's a very traumatic crime scene for a homicide victim, especially when you look at she was an elderly woman, as I said, could be your mother, could be my grandmother.
Grace Kennedy was 91 years old.
Nobody deserves that, but especially a nice, sweet old lady.
Nobody in Bryan, Ohio just goes after people like that. That's not who we are. That's not the way, that's not the way we do things. Who knows why it happened?
In late spring, 11 investigators obtained police reports compiled in the days after the murder. A friend called police after Grace did not get her mail, something she always quickly did. A shattered lamp with a damaged base was found beside her on her bed. Blonde hair was found clutched in her hand. A broken crucifix, likely broken in the struggle, was found beneath her. The victim's head was wrapped several times with blankets, covering her face and absorbing blood from several head wounds. She had defensive wounds on her arm. Drawers and closets were emptied, signs of a robbery, but nothing was taken, and an envelope filled with $90 was left undisturbed, and there was no sign of forced entry.
That's what happened.
In 2011, Grace's son Bob and his wife Kathy talked to WTOL.
I don't have any answers, and I'd really like to have some answers.
In the police report provided to 11 investigators, a list of 20 suspects was included. Those suspects included several men with drug histories, neighbors, family members, even elderly friends. In April of 2010, a person of interest was named by police, a man with a drug history who failed a polygraph and reportedly admitted to the killing, but testing of physical evidence could not tie him to the scene. And last year, Bryan's police department asked for help from the Attorney General's cold case unit. Begun in September of 2020, that unit has brought 25 to 30 cases to conclusion.
We'll use criminal intelligence, we'll use laboratory personnel, we'll use investigative personnel, but our methodology starts with each of those units reviewing the case file as we get them on an individualized basis. So what we're preventing is someone, like as you said, getting a tunnel vision.
Now, multiple sources told us that additional evidence is now being tested by the state.
There are people of interest within her case. Our challenge is to get evidence or be able to bring that to a grand jury or a prosecutorial standpoint on what we have within the case file.
And little physical evidence was found at the scene, but advances in lab testing and familial DNA testing may hold the key to this case.
This idea of familial testing and genealogy testing is something that is advancing the field. So you could have DNA from 15 years ago, it went into the CODIS database, and it never matched to anybody. Now the question becomes, can we use the CODIS database to figure out a first-degree relative of that target profile, or can we use genetic genealogy to determine a relative and then build a family tree and try to solve the case that way?
It's still a shadow, especially around the holidays. Just because it happened and because they never found the guy that did it or the person that did it.
A shadow. And every longtime resident has a theory about the shadow's name.
It was somebody probably that had an intent and a reason and just had it in for her for whatever reason.
Perhaps she was just targeted because she was elderly and an easy target or whatever.
A 12-and-a-half-year-old mystery waiting to be solved
I look at it like it's a jigsaw puzzle, but it's like a jigsaw puzzle that you bought used. So not only are you trying to find the corners and finding the straight edges, you're not even sure if all the pieces are there.
Now, you said you worked in MacArthur's headquarters.
Yeah,
Did you see him?
once. This gal and I were waiting to go upstairs in the elevator, and along comes a valet, and he said, you'll have to leave the elevator, MacArthur wants to go upstairs. And I said, well, he can ride with us. And this girl, I said, is that okay with you, Jane? And Jane said, sure, go ahead. And the man says, leave the elevator. And I said, okay, so we did.
Cedar Point, America's roller coaster. Rides, good times, sunshine. But there's a darker side and a lot of secrets. 11 Investigates has learned that over the past 5 years, the Sandusky Police Department has investigated 27 sexual assault allegations here at the Cedar Point Employee Housing Unit, 10 in the last year alone.
And in talking to some of the women, their stories have disturbing similarities.
I woke up to him inside of me, and I pushed him away, and I just got up and I just left. And then I told my mom, I called my mom, and I was like, this is like Mother's Day. Like, she shouldn't be able to get this call on Mother's Day. Like, her only daughter.
My sweater shawl thing was on the floor with my shirt, and I didn't know where my pants were. And I woke up and there was a condom stuck to my leg.
I had my door unlocked to go back and forth in the bathroom getting ready for bed, and I was taking out my contacts, and he just walked in, like, unannounced, and like, he grabbed me and pushed me up against the bed.
32 men are listed as suspects by Sandusky police in the 27 sexual assault reports. We don't know what many of the suspects look like. That's because they've never been arrested or charged with a crime. Of the 3 men charged with a crime, one name stands out, Donnell Folks. He's in prison for sexual battery. Alexander Makupson is charged with sexual imposition and still awaiting trial for an incident that took place in 2018. The alleged assaults have taken place in a series of employee dorms and apartments near downtown Sandusky. Those units did not receive positive reviews from most people we interviewed.
We went back to the dorm and realized that, like, we can't, like, unpack anything because the place was just dirty. They had, like, spiders everywhere in the corners. They had, like, cobwebs all over.
There's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of alcohol.
And multiple people told us that there's little security. Now, we wanted to talk to Cedar Point officials and the Cedar Point police chief, but our request for an interview was declined. We told a spokesman that we wanted to talk about numerous sexual assault reports, but we're told that there is no interview availability. The fact is, we simply don't know the true number of sexual assaults inside the Cedar Point employee housing units.
Cedar Point police have not turned over any of its incident reports, arguing it's a private force and not subject to records law.
But 11 Investigates is fighting for those records, believing that there may be more than those 27 assault allegations. Again, all that we know about are the incidents in which a victim went to Sandusky police or when Cedar Point called for assistance.
Do you have any females on? For Perkins, why? We got a sexual harassment complaint. Need a female. If not, we definitely need an officer.
Get your body cam,
Sandusky Police Chief Jared Oliver said his officers investigate every single complaint they receive, but he admitted that he has no way of knowing if Cedar Point police are reporting every incident.
If we are called, I say if, we may or may not be called. But if we are called and we go to the scene, then we take over the scene. If there's an arrest that needs to be made, our officers make that arrest. If there's a report that needs to be handled, all officers take care of that report. I can't speak if we're called to every call.
Now, tomorrow night, we're going to tell you more about the alleged victims and tell you about one former Cedar Point employee who was accused of assaulting coworkers during 2 different seasons.
I was too scared to even leave my apartment to tell anybody, so I just stayed in my apartment and just called 911.
Crystal Hunt was murdered by her boyfriend here in front of her home on Forest Avenue in central Toledo. And in July of this year, Crystal was charged with a first-degree misdemeanor for allowing her home to fall into disrepair. And last month, a bench warrant was issued for the woman who has now been dead for more than 19 years. And some people just don't understand how that can happen.
Halloween's coming up and stuff, but if you can bring back the dead, hey, that's, wow.
Yeah.
You're God.
The blight fight in the city of Toledo is a monumental challenge for those waging it. There are 120,000 total Toledo properties. The city has 11 inspectors who patrol the streets, looking for problems with homes and issuing warning letters if they determine the properties have a public nuisance violation.
I believe we've sent approximately about 12,000 notices out. But that covers a broad range. That would cover high grass, that would cover an abandoned house, and everywhere in between.
For nearly 5 months, 11 investigators looked into the Toledo blight issue and also a problem that often comes along with it: unpaid property taxes. More than 3,000 residents or former residents, including Crystal Hunt, owe the city $50 million in unpaid property taxes. What could you do with $50 million?
Oh my goodness. I take very seriously the responsibility of collecting the taxes, because I know that at the end of the day, the taxes go to essential services. They fund firefighter positions. They fund first responders and our lovely zoo and Imagination Station and all of these essential aspects to our community.
And on that delinquency list, 497 residents will never pay because they're dead. But despite this, the city is still devoting resources to prosecuting the dead. 58 of those who are dead and owe taxes have also been charged in court long after their death for having a nuisance property.
We utilize public records as our main source of being able to verify who that property owner would be. And public records don't always indicate who that next of kin would be.
But in Crystal Hunt's case, a public records search clearly shows that she died in 2003, and a further search shows several kin, including their phone numbers. And a simple Google search pulls up several articles related to her murder. Her sister would not go on camera, but she met us at Crystal's home, saying that for a time she tried to care for that home. Now it sits abandoned. The court summons still in the mailbox.
Lucas County no longer in the red when it comes to the transmission of COVID-19. That just in not too long ago. The state now only reports COVID data on Thursday afternoons. So we brought in lead investigator Brian Duggar to break down some of those numbers. So talk, Brian, about how Lucas County dropped down this week.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly good news. We're expecting them to drop down because their cases per 100,000 number really came down. And when you start looking at the numbers, the big thing the CDC looks at are cases per 100,000 and hospitalizations. And the key number in cases per 100,000 over a 1 week period is that 200 number. Last week, Lucas County was 208. This week, they came down to 140. So when you're above the 200, it takes much less to trigger the hospitalization numbers. So for example, last week, Lucas County had a 13.6 hospitalization, but they're over 200, and that put them in the red category. So this week, now that they're below 200, about the same number of hospitalization, but that then drops them down to the yellow. So it's all about really the cases per 100,000.